And we're just waiting to go live on Facebook. Just everybody, if you can, make sure your phones are turned off, your cell phone ringers are turned off, etc.
Those were live streams, so I guess we're ready to go.
Yeah, okay. This meeting is being live streamed. Welcome, everyone. I'm Angela Moonen, and we are back with a Stanley Law Offices webinar. Joe, for a very long time, has been advocating and educating through his on-air interviews, as well as these websites. Joe, if you recall, these webinars started back during the pandemic as an outcropping of all the confusion and uncertainties that existed then around workers' comp, et cetera. So we've been doing these for a while now, and you can reference these webinars on stanleylawoffices.com, right on the webinars tab under resources. And there are also some FAQ videos, what we call frequently asked questions. And that's what we're talking about today, navigating the road to winning your case, whether it's a personal injury case, a workers' compensation case, a Social Security disability case. And we have with us today, of course, attorney Joe Stanley. Welcome, Joe.
Morning.
Good morning. And we have with us today, which is really wonderful and exciting. These folks, some of these folks here with us today are who clients most often work with in their day-to-day on their cases. And the paralegal is paramount in the success of the case and working in partnership with the attorney assigned to the case. So today we have with us Katrina Nuzzo. And is it Nuzzo or Nuzzo, Katrina?
Nuzzo.
Nuzzo. I want to make sure you Nuzzo, like if we were in it, right, in the homeland, we would say Nuzzo. Katrina Nuzzo, paralegal, and we have Sandra Jones. Many of you have seen Sandy on some commercials and things. Sandy is our insider. She brings tremendous amount of insider insight because you worked in the insurance industry before. Is that right, Sandy?
Yes, for almost 30 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So now you're on this side of the table and bringing
Oh,
us
yeah.
all your wisdom.
Yep.
And then we have with us Social Security Disability Benefits paralegal Amanda Himes. Hi, Amanda.
Hello.
And Amanda, you work with Shannon in Social Security Disability, and you work cases all over the country. That's a little bit different than what your colleagues do, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So in getting going with this, we want to, I'm going to turn this over to Joe to let him talk a little bit. I'm going to get our Facebook Live up on my phone so that if you have questions, you are welcome to ask us. All right, Joe, talk a little bit about why you thought it was important today to build some context around some of the top things that clients have a challenge with in understanding this personal injury and workers' comp Social Security road.
Well, I was thinking this over and discussing it. We could call it the great gripes of the clients, but it might be the great gripes of the staff also. But it's the number one question. If you peruse what the paralegals get and listen to the things that go along, really is how long is it going to take, and what do I need to do as part of this? And the answers that are given to these questions are important because the clients don't really understand that it depends on your injury, it depends on the kind of case, and it depends on the position of the person paying. Most of the time that's the insurance company in workers' comp and in a personal injury case, and the government in Social Security disability cases. And the ultimate answer to that is you have to go through a process in order to demonstrate you have a valid case. And if whoever's in charge doesn't want to pay a reasonable price or doesn't want to settle your claim or doesn't want to award you Social Security benefits, your remedy is to go to court, whether it's Social Security hearing, whether it's workers' compensation court, or whether it's a trial. And what do those really mean? You know, how do people even have an understanding and a comprehension of how that process is going to affect them? And I think everyone out there, if you've never been through it, has a complete misunderstanding of how long it takes, how difficult it is, and how much you need to cooperate in order to be successful. All right. So, you know, and I'm going to let the paralegals talk about it, but you can see from the questions that they're going to talk about, you know, they're all about process and how long it's going to take and what they have to do, or what's going to happen to them. And I can assure you that in the workers' compensation scenario, they ask about suing their employer. They ask about whether they have to work, whether they have to stay attached to the labor market, which I say it's a fascinating concept that no one understands and no one agrees with. And it becomes problematic. And if they don't understand it from the beginning, they certainly aren't going to understand it when it happens. Same thing happens in a personal injury case. You know, what do I need to do? I'm not at fault. Somebody did something to me. Why can't I just get paid? Well, it doesn't work that way. You have to prove what happened to you, and you have to cooperate in that proof. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a magical thing. And, you know, if it happens fast in the legal business, there's usually something wrong. I mean, I can just tell you that with certainty. And, you know, and the same for Social Security disability, you know, the clients, well, why do I have to fill this out? Or why do I have to do that? I think that's a common question across the board from all the clients is, why do I have to do this? Or why do I have to do that? Or that's too much bother, or I'm not going to do it. And they need to understand, and that's where we're going to start out here, that the client needs to understand that this is a complicated process and they need to do the things we tell them to do. We're not making it up. We're not doing it because we don't have anything to do. We're instilling in them the best information possible so they can be successful. But if they don't do it, you know, you can bring a horse to the water, but he still has to drink it. You know, I mean, you have to understand what you need to do to be successful. And we talk about this, but when you're in the trenches and you have to deal with people every day, you're now going to get those perceptions from the people that do it. And I think a good place to start is from the Social Security disability. That's at the end of the road, but it's a good preliminary beginning. So we'll start with Amanda, and then we'll go to Katrina, and then we'll finish up with Sandy.
Yeah, so going off with the making sure that you're getting your paperwork done and information.
What do you do, Amanda? Tell the people what you do and why you do it. Okay, so they know who you are and what you do.
I am the Social Security disability paralegal. Basically, I am Shannon's right hand. I get the medical records. I call Social Security. I get status updates. I send letters. I mean, I do a lot of things actually. So yeah, and so going off with the long process and how you can make it go faster or whatever. I mean, really, with Social Security, you can't make it go faster because you're dealing with the government. So, but when Social Security sends you paperwork, they send you a bunch of different questionnaires depending on your disabilities. They'll send you a function report. They want to know your daily activities, work history. If you claim that you have migraines, they'll send you a headache questionnaire. So any of those questionnaires that they send you, it's important to get those done as soon as possible and sent back in, because even if you have one missing piece, Social Security can say, well, you know, they didn't send in this piece of paper, so we're going to deny them. So the most important thing really is to make sure that you get your paperwork done, you get it in a timely manner, and you do it completely.
And you're helping guide them on that path, right? Because there is a lot of, because I can imagine I get a simple questionnaire sometimes and it's not so simple, right? It can be a little bit complex and not sure how to answer. And because it's so important to dot the I's and cross the T's, you help make sure that all of that is accurate and I know that clients access you a great deal through the process.
Yeah.
And once all the, I'm going to fill in though, once all the paperwork is done and it's all been put forth to the Social Security Administration, your job is to tell people to be patient, and they are going to get a hearing when they get a hearing. And there's not much we can do about it. And no matter how many times they call us or the Social Security Administration, that's not going to change. And how many times do you get those kind of calls?
I get probably, I would say 3 a day, asking, you know, how much longer. I can't really tell you how much longer.
How is there and I know this average is a tough word, and because it's all over the board, but of all the cases, because some personal injury cases can go for years and years, and certainly workers' comp, we'll talk with Katrina about how some, you know, a lot of those files are left open forever because that individual is always treating indefinitely. But with Social Security disability, it's a little bit different. Amanda, can you talk about that, how it differs in the timelines?
Yeah, I mean, so when you do your initial application, that usually is the one that takes the longest to get the decision. That can take anywhere from 2 to 6 months. And then, you know, if you get a denial, we do an appeal to request reconsideration. And then that one also can take 2 to 6 months. I mean, we do have some cases that have gone a little bit longer than that. Like I know of one off the top of my head, it's at 9 months in reconsideration right now. And I've called them and there's really no way to speed that process up. But once you get your decisions and your appeals, if you get your information in for your appeal as soon as possible, that will make that process go faster. Like if you get your medical information, the doctor's visits that you've had and things like that, we put those in your appeal so that Social Security can request those records. So the faster you get it to us, the faster we can get it to them.
And why, with the questions on, you know, so time and when and what's happening and when am I going to get my benefits and an answer, et cetera. That's one top question. What's an example of another question that you face frequently?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Somebody just
What's a question that you face frequently aside from, okay, what's going on? What's next? What's another question that you bump into?
Do I have to fill these papers out? Because Social Security will send questionnaires and they'll send them 2 or 3 times. And people will call and say, well, I already gave them this information. I gave them this information. Do I have to fill this out? Yes, you have to fill every single piece of paper out that Social Security sends you, even if you've answered those questions before, because it's kind of might be a different intake or perception on that same question.
Gotcha. So it feels like it's repetitive a lot.
Yes,
is what you're saying, but it's not avoidable. It's unavoidable.
right. Because like I said before, if you miss one piece of paper, they can say, well, you didn't turn this in, so you're denied. Even if you could qualify.
Is there anything else that you see in your world that is pretty common that people have a concern or question about?
Yeah, Social Security likes to send them to IMAs or IMEs. Those are consultative exams with their doctors. A lot of our clients are like, well, I see my doctor for this. Why do I have to go to their doctor for this? And basically it's for like a second opinion. So they can see if, you know, what their doctor says is really what's going on.
Joe, that's got to be across the board, right? regardless. You've got those independent medical examiners. Sandy, you must deal with them.
Well,
right?
the word independent is a fault. That's a fallacy.
A
There's no such
misnomer.
thing. That's
Right,
no such.
right,
They're
right.
not independent. They're paid medical exams to get an opinion, whatever it might be. But yes, everyone is looking for a reason to do something. And so, and there sometimes an opinion is out there for, depending on the cost for anything. So, but yes.
All right, so now we're going to, Amanda, is there anything just for right now, anything extra that you want to add before we talk with Katrina about workers' compensation?
I mean, really, the most important thing with Social Security is communication. Keep us updated, keep Social Security updated with, you know, if you are working part-time or, you know, getting any kind of income, anything that changes from your initial application, you need to update Social Security. So communication is key.
Right. Okay, Katrina, workers' compensation. You get the question a lot, you know, can I even sue my employer?
Yes, almost
Right,
every
and
day
then-
I get asked.
And I'm sure the answer is, well, yes, maybe. How do you proceed with that?
So I let my clients know you can't sue your employer. That's why they have workers' compensation insurance. What I found a successful way to kind of get them to understand it, because they get very frustrated. They're like, this is my employer's fault, and wondering why they're being paid by an insurance company. And I try and explain to them that workers' comp insurance for them, whoever their carrier is like you having your auto insurance. So they pay into it to insure them, you know, if you're injured to, you know, pay out for workers' compensation. And they seem to understand it after that, but everybody just, wants to, well, not everybody, some people get nervous or like, I don't want to go after my employer because I have a good relationship with them, but a lot of people want to go after their employer.
And so that workers' compensation is just like every other, as you said, it's an insurance policy in
Yes.
place when
Yes.
stuff, if and when stuff like that happens. What's something, another common speed bump or a question that comes up for you a lot?
When it comes to going back to work, a lot of times basically everything in comp goes by your doctor's opinion. Your pay goes by your doctor's opinion, your work status, everything. So when you're released by your doctor to go back to work light duty, if your employer offers you a light duty position and you deny it, then they can cut your payments off. So a lot of people will say, I can't work light duty. I can't handle it. And we have to try and encourage them that you have to try. They're saying they're gonna, you know, accommodate your restrictions. You have to try. And, you know, speak with your doctor if you can't. But that's a question I get a lot, is about working light duty.
Right. And what, when someone, how does that process work when they, if they give it a shot and you say, try, how long do they try for before, and who determines it's all back to the doctor yet again?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to their discretion, I guess, and what they can handle. But, you know, I always tell them, if you go back and you can't handle it, then, you know, you need to speak with your doctor again. And in those scenarios, either the doctor, if they'll decide to pull from work again, or, you know, give more restrictions and, yeah.
Take it from there. Anything else? What is I think you had another one that you said is pretty common for you.
Let's see. What do I have here? We get asked a lot about pay. Because on comp, you're obviously not making what you were making when you were working, unless your employer is paying you, which some employers will do that. You're only receiving 2/3 of your average weekly wage, and your average weekly wage is calculated by what you were making in the year prior to your injury. If you weren't with the employer for a year prior, then they will go by a similar workers payroll, which they'll take someone that's done your position and look at their earnings for the year prior. Your pay also does go by your doctor's opinion. If your doctor says you're 100% temporarily impaired, then you will receive 100% of that average weekly wage. So I will get phone calls constantly. My pay went down. I always look into it. So if your doctor changes your percentage of impairment, they say, now you're 75% impaired, you're only going to receive 75 of that average weekly wage, 75% of it. So it can fluctuate. If they send you to an independent medical exam, they can change the pay based on the percentage the independent medical examiner gave you. So that is a constant phone call also about the changing pay.
And then there's a question also that you bump into about, can the employer terminate?
Yes,
them?
You can be terminated. I explained that to my clients. They can terminate you, whether just as if you weren't injured, they have a right to terminate you. If they terminate you while you are pulled from work by your doctor, your benefits would go on. You were pulled from work. If you're terminated, while working, but you're on restrictions and you have an impairment, it can be a little tricky for us. We would normally have to attach you to the labor market, show you're looking for work, and you have to make an effort to try and find work. But if there's valid reasons that you were terminated, then it's a struggle for us that we can't really fight. If you were constantly late or calling in, not showing up, if you did something to warrant that, that.
So it's not to do with job performance typically as much, because the impairment is in place. It's more to do with the other behaviors and actions and things that might put them in a spot.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are certainly circumstances where we definitely will fight. It was retaliatory termination.
Wow.
These people, if the employer doesn't give them a reason and they were injured, all of a sudden they're terminated, and there's no evidence that they've done any wrongdoing for that termination, then we can come in and we can fight that it was retaliatory.
Okay. All right, Joe, did you have any other questions or comments for Katrina before we move on to Sandy?
Well, again, workers' comp is a very complex and interrelated situation. Of course, a lot of our clients have a personal injury claim and a workers' compensation claim, because even though you can't sue your employer, many times you are hurt in the course of your employment that allows you to sue somebody else, whether it's on a construction site, it's the general contractor or the owner of the property, or whether it's from a defective product in the workplace, or if you're hurt and driving a car during the course of employment, or you're walking to work on a slip and fall on a defective sidewalk. Those are just some of the scenarios of clients that we represent. But a good percentage of our clients are both represented by workers' comp, Social Security, and personal injury claims. And so they're all in the same spectrum. You want to exhaust the possibilities of a personal injury claim if you're hurt on the job, because workers' compensation benefits are limited in the amount, as Katrina was talking about, and they're limited in the time frame. They end unless you are permanent total, which is a very unlikely scenario. So you do not get any extra benefits for pain and suffering or the loss enjoyment of life or any of the other things that come with a personal injury claim. So you have a significant injury. The personal injury claim is something that has to be evaluated. And what happens if you have a significant injury? Social Security disability comes into play because people can't go back to work. And most people don't have long-term disability policies or of any kind. So Social Security disability, unlike Social Security retirement, then comes into play. So it's a spectrum of services that are almost always interrelated and something that has to be evaluated. Sometimes we have to tell clients what you need is apply for Social Security disability because you are so hurt. Sometimes we have to tell people that they have a workers' compensation claim when they think they only have a personal injury claim. And so it's something that the paralegals develop sometimes facts that we didn't learn as lawyers because the clients sometimes forget to tell us, or they didn't remember, or didn't understand. And so it's important. Cases develop, they change, circumstances change. And I think that's the one thing Amanda said that's critical, is communication is critical. And when your circumstances change, whether it's a workers' compensation case, personal injury case, Social Security case, you need to communicate those changes and be honest about the changes and let us know, let the doctors know, let everybody know so that they can be dealt with, because running from the truth is not a good thing. So
Never a good strategy. Okay, so Sandy, talk a little bit about what you see in the personal injury arena in terms of the most frequently asked questions, the challenges, the concerns, the fears that clients have when you work with them.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm a paralegal for one of our attorneys, and we do personal injury, your trip and falls and auto accidents and things like that. After the intake, usually I contact our clients and get a little more information, and I always go over the process with them. A lot of them never been in an accident or had an injury and don't know what to do. And I always try to tell them, because the first question is, well, how long does this take? Especially a couple weeks into it. Well, how long does this process take? Because I know they're probably hurt and they could be out of work, not work, and they need the money. And I tell them it could take as long as as long as you're treating, there's the process there. And then as they're treating, I'm collecting the medicals, getting the police report, doing whatever investigation we need to do to, back up our liability on the defendant. And then we're reaching out to the defendant, the at fault party, to get their information, to get their insurance information, coverage limits. And then we also have to reach out to any lien holders possibly that may put a lien on, like Medicare, Medicaid. Some of your health insurance plans will assert a lien if they're in a ERISA plan. If it's an auto accident, no fault will pay your no fault benefits, which are the medical benefits of your car. And then there's not a lien there unless they get into other coverages there. But and if it's just a slip and fall or trip and fall, then normally your health insurance would cover it. I get asked a lot about, well, how come his car insurance isn't paying? They really believe that the other guy's at fault, his insurance is going to cover it. And I tell them, no, the insurance goes with the car, with the passengers and the people in that car, and explain the benefits. But I tell them basically in New York, there's a threshold they have to meet. And unless they come to us with broken bones, dismemberments, things like that, there's a soft tissue injury threshold, and they have to be treating, pretty extensively for the first 90 out of the first 180 days. So that means, going to the doctor, following up, getting therapy, chiro, starting injections, maybe it's an aggravation. So as long as they're treating, there's going to be a process of me collecting the meds as they get done treating. So it's at least probably a minimum of 6 months. And yeah, I've got cases that are 6, 7 years old. Sometimes we have to sue them. And if that's the case, then yeah, it's a longer process and there's more involved things to do. And that process I'll explain at that time. But yeah.
What's one of the top questions that you get, Sandy? Aside from how long is this going to take? What's another one that comes up often for you?
Well, a lot of them wonder why Medicaid gets involved, because a lot of them have Medicaid. And sometimes when that first visit comes in, emergency room or an urgent care visit, no one knows about the no fault benefits or even know what the claim number is going to be because they just had the accident. So of course the facility is going to bill your health insurance because they want someone to pay it, and it's going to be somebody. So you give them your card and that's what gets charged. So sometimes when we check, we find out Medicaid got involved, and they're like, well, I didn't use them. I didn't, why do they have to pay anything? And I have to explain that sometimes, especially on the first bill, before they get that claim number from their carrier, that, they paid a bill and then they want to get reimbursed. And then we try to get the process where I get no fault to try to reimburse the bill, or, Medicaid to bill the carrier to get them reimbursed. So it doesn't come out of our client's pocket. And I get often, well, Joe, give me an advance. Does Joe give out loans? And I'm like, no, he's not started that program yet. and I try to, get them to not want to. I try to talk them out of it because they're very expensive. And unless they're really, really down and out, I try to.
Some of those high interest loans, some of those
Yeah,
high
because these
interest loans, you
clients,
mean.
yeah, they're not low interest. They're very high interest. Like you could borrow 1,000 and 3 months later, you're owing them 1,500. That's a lot. That's like borrowing money from Uncle Benny, and and a lot of our clients, they're
Actually,
down and
Uncle
out,
Benny is
they,
probably cheaper, but
But we can't get loans in comp, and I'm very happy that we can't, because I have clients constantly asking me, and I just feel like you say it would be very dangerous to, to
Oh,
get
yeah.
involved with that.
yeah, these are non-recourse loans that these companies do for personal injury clients. Lawyers cannot loan clients money. That's unethical. It's prohibited by law. You can't do it. But the client can contract with these companies, and it is a common question, and our common answer to them is you should never do it. The interest rates are exorbitant, and it can also significantly impact your resolution of your case, because if the loan goes on for a long period of time, you borrowed $1,000, you could owe $15,000 in 3 years. That's not even an exaggeration.
Mhm.
And then if the value of your case is not that much, the loan company might take all your money and you get nothing.
I try to discourage them. I try to tell the loan company, listen, this is worth about this much. We've got no offers. And I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know what's going to settle, but, and I try to discourage them. And it's just helping out the client, I believe. And it's just, I hate to see them. I've seen people with the high award of 25, because that's what the policy was, and I barely got them $100, and it's sad. And then a lot of times I think I'm a pretty good negotiator. I have to negotiate down Medicare loans, Fidelis, Optum will, represent these folks, and I have to negotiate, and I have to negotiate with the loan companies. I'm like, listen, your final was 1512 2 months ago, and I've had to delay with Medicaid because I'm fighting and disputing their lien. Will you stick with that other one and not increase it to 1,800 this month? Yeah, we'll stick to that number. I said, okay, thank you. I'm trying to give her at least a couple $100 in her pocket. But yeah, I feel like I'm a negotiator, a counselor, all kinds of things. But yeah, it's all about the money. And sometimes if it's a larger settlement coming, and we have the process of 1 to 2 months of trying to get that loan straightened out, or the liens, to get it wrapped up after we get the finals, they're like, well, can I get an advance? And I'm like, oh no, Joe doesn't do that. We can't do that. We can't get that check signed and deposited until all that's done. So no.
Right,
But,
all the liens, all that stuff has to be taken care of and made whole
Yeah.
before the client gets their payout.
Well,
yeah.
I would
Joe,
say that is the most frustrating thing for any client. After the case, they think the case is resolved. They believe that they're going to be paid instantaneously. And we need to communicate with them regularly that this is sometimes you spend more time trying to resolve liens than you did trying to resolve the actual case. And I'm sure the paralegals hear complaints about where's my money? Why, repeatedly. And again, it's because we need to communicate, I think, better sometimes over the course that, listen, this is not going to be just because we resolve that it's going to be a period of time before you're going to get your money, because everybody's got their hand out to get their money back.
That
Yep.
does even happen in Social Security too. Clients, they'll get a favorable decision and they'll call, when am I getting my money? When am I getting my money? But, sometimes they've been getting public assistance and they have to pay that back, and then we get our fee and then they get their money. So it's just, there's a process to that too.
Yes. And they don't sometimes understand or don't want to understand that they may not have the first crack at their money. Somebody
Right.
else does.
Well, and because it's all contingency, I mean, you all are working for free in essence until anything does get resolved. So yes, the firm has to get paid because people can't work for free and support their families and do what they need to do, right, Sandy? So the firm has to get paid in fairness to the work and energy that they've put in on your behalf, on the client's behalf. So Sandy, when you think about the 30 years of working on the other side of the table on behalf of insurance companies, and now how many years now on this side of the table?
It'll be 7 in November. I've been here and I love it. I mean, I enjoy talking to the clients and telling them how to handle things, whether it's even their collision, which we don't really get involved in, but I enjoy helping them out, because there's things. I had a guy this morning, I took an intake from this couple and they had an accident yesterday and they called from the scene and they called their carrier. And they said, well, okay, yeah, well, thanks for calling us, because he had no collision coverage. There's really nothing that they were going to do. I said, well, you told him you were hurt and we're going to the hospital, right? He goes, yeah. I said, well, that's a problem right there. They should have taken a claim from you, gave you a claim number so you can use that when you go to the hospital or when you see your
Right, so
doctor
you're
tomorrow.
telling when you go into the hospital, you've
Right.
got that you said this is
Right.
related to, this is going to be related to
Because you want them to bill your company. I said, because your company is going to pay your medical. And that's the first thing they should have done, was gotten a no-fault package out to you, which we will also. I said, but they should have given you a claim number. I said, so you need to call them back and make sure they open up a no-fault claim for you and your wife because you were hurt and you went to the hospital. And, a lot of carriers I find aren't doing that. They're just, and then I even had a carrier deny a claim because when I got the application, I forwarded on with my letter of rep to them saying, we're representing this gentleman. And they denied his claim because it was like 10 days late. I said, listen, when he called you, did any of you people ask if he was hurt? And he said he did. And did any of you bother to ask him to fill out a no-fault application? I said, so I think you denying him within the first, and not for being there 30 days is pretty rotten. I said, when he notified you and you didn't do anything about it. And they still wouldn't honor it. And I was like really upset with that. That's wrong. I think carriers are just sometimes don't do the right thing.
More than not,
Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
they do the right thing. But then they're in the business of not paying claims. And sometimes
Oh
it
yeah,
is
they're in the
just a
business.
level
They
of,
make a lot of money.
yeah. And, and sometimes it's a policy of not paying. And then you also have people that are not qualified and trained. So a lot of the times they don't know what they're doing. And that,
Yep.
which is to the insurance company's advantage, is that if somebody
Yeah.
doesn't know the right thing to say, then they can claim
I mean, I
ignorance.
felt like when I worked there, I was trying to protect my insured and his policy. And then now I feel like, I mean, what if this was my mother or my father or my brother in an accident and they needed help or guidance? So that's why I'm trying to help people and tell them as much as I can, try to guide them. And I try to fill them in on what's going to happen, what to expect, because nothing like a shocker of anything, and I tell them if I feel like it's going to go down a bad road and, they're not going to get a big offer. I just try to be as open as I can with them. And I tell them I've worked on both sides. So I'm going from what experience I have, and a lot of them appreciate it.
I think if you give them information and let them know, they're not so shocked by the process.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are anyways,
Yeah.
but there's not much you can do about
So,
it.
so Katrina, how did you make, we heard a little bit about Sandy. I'm just curious because we don't get to have the paralegals on here as often. What was the path to what you're doing right now, and why in workers' comp, and what is it about workers' comp? Because you hear what Sandy does and some of the other folks at the other office. What is it that's different about what you do, I guess, and how did you make your way to where you are right now?
It kind of fell into my lap after COVID and after the shutdown. When everything started reopening is when I came into work here. And I always had like an interest in law. But came in for a secretarial position, and ended up kind of getting really involved, being really interested in what I was doing, and just learning the ropes of workers' comp every day, and brought my way up. And it was all a foreign, I say all the time, when I started, it was a foreign language to me. Like, I'm never going to learn this. This is insane. And now it's like, I can sit and I could talk about workers' compensation for hours. Just, I mean, there's still, things are constantly changing, and there's still so much that I don't know, but I've just, from something being so foreign and unknown to me, it's just like a second language.
Right.
So,
Right. How about you, Amanda? You're working with Shannon and doing the Social Security disability cases. How did you make your way into what you're doing? What do you enjoy most about what you do?
I mean, well, I interviewed and got hired as a legal assistant, and then I think it was maybe a week and a half later, Joe said, well, you're gonna go work in Social Security. I was like, all right. And I mean, Shannon has taught me a lot. I really knew nothing about this process at all when I first started. I mean, and like Katrina said, there's always new things popping up. There's always going to be something to learn. And I mean, my favorite part about this whole process is when the process is over, whether you get paid in the recon, or at the hearing level. But one of my favorite things is to be able to tell the client, you won, you're getting paid, your struggles are over. So yeah. And I mean,
I can't
hopefully-
imagine the relief. I can't conceive of the relief that must come over them when
Oh, for
you
sure.
cross
Because
that
a lot
finish
of these
line.
people, I mean, not a lot, but some of them, they, are struggling so badly that they're being evicted, their electric's getting shut off and things like that. So, if we can do whatever we can do to get them money, it's definitely a good feeling.
And don't you think too, with Social Security, and Joe, you've talked about this before as well, people kind of make the assumption that they've worked all their lives, and they think, okay, now I need to collect disability benefits because I can't work. I've paid into the system for the last 30 years. When I apply, I'm gonna get my money, right? But it doesn't always work that way.
The process about a process. There are so many rules. I mean, Shannon worked for the Social Security Administration, who trained Amanda. She worked for them for 30 years. So being on the other side but it's literally rules about rules about rules. So no, Social Security disability is not supposed to be a long-term personal disability policy. It's supposed to be a catastrophic disability policy. So it's difficult, very difficult to collect it if you're under 50, maybe even 55. We can have a discussion about that, but but it's supposed to be catastrophic. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people do not have any disability insurance at all. And by the way, people are much more likely to become disabled before retirement age of 67 than they are to die. Hence, if the only choice you have is to qualify for Social Security benefits, then that's the route you have to take. But it's still not a guaranteed situation, particularly if you're younger than 50. I think I cited that right, even though I don't do Social Security disability. I do know about it because, again, over the years, many of my seriously injured clients have had to become involved in that process. So, which is why we ultimately brought in a Social Security attorney to represent our clients, because it's having it integrated together, the workers' comp, Social Security, disability, and personal injury is far better for the client than having separate lawyers handling
Firms,
each
right,
item.
Right, because they do have to communicate with one another and support each
Well,
other's.
sometimes there can be significant financial consequences to decisions made in one versus the other.
So a decision in a SSD case or a workers' comp can dramatically affect the PI case or vice versa.
That is correct.
Yeah. So are there any other questions or thoughts that you'd like to share, Joe, before we wrap up, in terms of where, from your perch, that you see that you get inundated? We've done a lot of FAQ videos over time about the liens that Sandy talked about what are no-fault benefits, about, well, what happens if there's multiple, I wasn't the only one in the accident. There's a multiple vehicle accident. There's all sorts of scenarios there, but anything that you bump into often that we haven't touched on today that you want to conclude with?
No, but I think it's the thing I would like is that, you got to meet 3 people here that are very sympathetic and try to help people out all the time. And the one thing is that I hope that our current clients and potential clients says, listen, and they're trying to help you and be sympathetic. Don't give them a hard time. They are trying to do their job and help you. They're not trying to fight with you. And they try to do the best they can. And they understand that you have a difficult situation. And because they know they have to deal with it 1,000 times. And so they're trying their best for you because they want you to have the best outcome. And you can see by how they talk today that they are very dedicated to what they do. So they're not your enemy, and they understand that you're in a difficult situation, but it's a process and there's only so much we can do.
It is something I say almost every day is I'm on your side. Like I say it probably multiple times a day. I'm on your side.
Well, and don't you think mentally and emotionally that's so vital, though, even just to hear it, Katrina, because they don't probably hear it from a lot of other people, and certainly are not hearing it from their insurance carriers. And
I
sometimes
think they're in a bad place. Yeah, I think they're
Yeah.
in a bad place and they feel like everyone's against them. And, and I just have to assure them that, this is what we're here for. And, we're on your side. We're here to help you. We're here to ease this process for you, make it easier. And I just tell them, now that you have us, just worry about treat your injury. And you get things in the mail, don't stress out. We get it also, just you treat and take care of your injury and take all the stress off.
as much as you possibly can, right?
Yes.
Given the circumstances, right?
They can be defensive, but like I said, I try to be sympathetic for that. I've had clients go off and then call me up 20 minutes later apologizing. And I tell them, like, I get it. I understand you're just in a bad place right now and you're worried, and financially it's, I don't think anyone can imagine.
Devastating, right?
Yes.
Right.
So,
Well, that's to your point, Joe. You said it for years that, to do the work that you all do takes a special kind of person, and a special empathetic and sympathetic ear, patience, fortitude, resilience, all those things. Really a lot of the same characteristics that you're asking of your clients to cultivate and to bring forth through this whole process, because nobody knows what's around the corner. No one ever thinks they're going to get in an accident or be hurt at work or disabled, whatever the case may be. It's how do you work with as a team, and understanding that you are part of a team and you're all working together to get the very best possible maximum award that is available in their situation for their case. So, all right, with that, I invite you to share this webinar. This is going to archive on Facebook. It's also going to be available on StanleyLawOffices.com under the resources tab, webinars. There are testimonials, most frequently asked questions, videos on the YouTube channel as well for Stanley Law. I've put our social media here on the screen, as well as Music for the Mission, which is a 501c3 that Joe is a founder of, and the Stanley Law team is a big supporter of. So we invite you to visit musicforthemission.org as well to learn more about that and the good works that the Stanley Law team is doing in all the communities they serve across upstate New York. With that, we'll be back, I'm sure, in sometime in October, right, Joe? As the leaves are falling from the trees.
As long as it's only the leaves, yes. All right.
Yeah, that's right. All right, be well all, take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.